Hello, hello, and welcome to Middle Earth Readings. I am your host, Maggie Rose Cunningham, and we are in the week of the waning moon. So we're looking at, broadly speaking, at completing and releasing, but we're also drawing on the themes that are called to through the planetary movements this week. So we're going to look a little bit at the planetary movements. We're going to look at that theme of completion and release. And our exploration topic that we've been looking at for this whole lunar cycle has been looking at the path of the mystic. And I saw so many thoughtful, powerful, helpful comments from people in the Hearth Space group after the last live. So thank you so much to those of you who shared what your experience of following the path of the mystic is. So we're going to spend one more week looking at that, and we're looking at this in the context of what happens when our mystic and our healer selves are in conflict with each other. So that's what we're going to play with. I'm just going to take a little sip of tea. As I started sort of, coughing. So just literally just as I was starting, I got a little bit of a frog in my throat. I feel like it's Ansu's waiting to come in. Soon as Chariot's going to enter Ansu's, not this week but next week, and there's so many new seeds sowing through this time. I can feel that Ansu's energy, just sort of hello and here, don't forget me. So I'd love to know in the chat box actually, what is your beverage of choice at the moment? So I've got this new tea which is rose and chamomile, which I'm really enjoying at the moment. I'm finding it very relaxing. I sat in I've got a new swing chair, new egg chair. I moved from my last house. I really miss this big tree that I had that I could sit in my hammock in and literally feel that moment where you're suspended between earth and sky. And I miss the tree. So for my birthday, I got an egg chair, one of these swinging egg chairs. And I got a tiny tree, not big enough to hold the egg chair, but I put some lights in it and it's next to the pond. And I was sitting there with my rose and chamomile tea in my egg chair in the dark. The children were in bed. Oh, it was just bliss. What's your bliss moment? I'd love to know what your bliss moment is. And it's although we're working on the path of the mystic, the healer has come through really, really strongly for me this week. This call for self-healing and for energizing, and I feel as if this week, this sort of moments of completion and release are about recognizing what we need, what self-care we need to put in place in order to be able to release fully and to be in our best selves energetically. That sometimes completing and releasing is about inner completing and inner releasing. Candy says, I'm enjoying a cuppa right now. Susanna's saying, jasmine green tea. Jasmine green tea. Oh, that sounds lovely. And Justine says, one day I will have one of those egg chairs. They are amazing. Put the intention out in the world, Justine, for that. And release whatever is in the way of you not having your egg chair. And then we can manifest it. Because they're so fabulous, so fabulous. Candice, my bliss, sitting with a cup of tea in an egg chair too. Yeah, everyone, Susan's saying, I want an egg chair. Candice is saying, and a good book. Definitely in a good book. I couldn't read a book out there because I haven't quite got the lighting yet to read a book, but who knows? Well, during the day we'll see. And I can see that people are also sharing their runes. So if you're here live, we're going to be covering our 6 runes, which are the 6 runes that we haven't already done through the course of this lunar month. But do share the rune that you're working with, and if anything comes up that feels particularly pertinent to this week, I will look at that for you. If you are watching the replay, then please do put hashtag replay, and you can share your rune as well. It's always lovely to hear what your runes are, which rune is guiding you at the moment, which rune has come forward for you as a spirit guide, whether it has been for the course of this whole lunar cycle, whether you're working on it for a week, for a day. Which rune is your spirit guide right now? And Darcy's saying, the beach and the ocean are my bliss. There you go. We're in egg chairs, we've got trees, we've got tea, we've got books, we've got the ocean. It's going to be a blissful day, really, isn't it? It's going to be a lovely, lovely day. And thank you very much for those of you who have shared your runes. I'm going to note them down because we've got some really great chat going and I don't want to forget them. So Suzanne, that is you have got Ansu, so that's interesting because I'm feeling Ansu's really, really strongly, and it is going to come up today, even though it's not one of our focus runes. We've got Bacano for Candice. does is always coffee. Always coffee. Fair enough. We're not going to stop you from having your coffee. And Lisa, strong black coffee and love a good book. Maggie's got Thurasaz, or we're definitely going to be doing Thurasaz again today. Again, it's not one of our focus drinks, but it's very, very strong because we have one planetary movement, which is in Thurasaz. And Darcy Swella now showing confirmation of emotional neglect was interesting. Yeah, so these things come up. They do come up to highlight what we can work on. Not always what we need to work on. It's always an invitation, I think. It's like the universe saying, here is my invitation to you. This is what healing or what wisdom might be available to you in this moment. And we get to choose. We get to choose whether we, or how deeply we are able to partner with the rune and what it offers to us in the moment. And Rue is saying, I've got Kinaz for my conscious rune and Lagos for my unconscious rune. What a beautiful combination of the water and the fire there, the cleansing, purifying water and the igniting, passionate fire there, Rue. So let's see what comes up there for you. I don't normally write them down, but it feels right to do it at this point because I can see that people are sharing lots in the chat. If I ever miss your rune, don't feel like, oh, I mustn't say anything. Do pop it in the chat again. If I miss you, let me know. Just say, oh, you've missed me. Or if you spot that I've missed somebody's rune, let me know because the chat moves fast. Okay, so we've talked about our beverages of choice. We've talked about the theme. I want to talk a little bit more about the conflict between the mystic and the healer. So the mystic, as we've explored, connects so strongly with our wild side, with the possible, with what's available in the moment. And what this can mean is that if you are strongly called to the mystic path, you are often a trailblazer or a rule breaker or a disruptor. Right? That's your job, is to bring back what you have received from the wild places, from Utengard, from the outer realm, to bring this vitalizing new energy back out of Utengard and into Innengard. You know, Darcy, you've just described that, a room working in that way, offering a new insight. And you obviously are in a place where you're saying, I'm able to embrace that. You know? But for many people, when somebody comes along and they say, wow, you know, look at this deep piece of wisdom, this new insight, this revelation of what's gone wrong before, of what needs to change in the world. And even if people are likely to be on board in the long run, most people, when they feel that change coming through, will have a moment where they go, no! And they may attach that to you. Or, if you have a strong healer self as well, the healer who instinctively wants to resolve tension, resolve conflict, weave back together, restore, replenish. That can be a really, really uncomfortable place for the healer self, because they can feel the conflict between people. They can feel the judgment that might come from people when a mystic comes forward and says, you know, this is what I think, and it's deeply, deeply uncomfortable. It is that sensation of the fabric of the universe ripping to make way for a new pattern to be woven in, and the healer doesn't like it. The healer wants to get to the reweaving. That's their instinctive place. So the instincts of the mystic and the healer can be in conflict with each other. Now, in our society, it tends to be that if we are very energetically aware, if we are dreamers, if we are following the magical pathway, that it is slightly more acceptable to be a healer than it is to be a mystic. No, and I'm going to say this is a very, very general thing, but it is my experience, particularly if you identify as a woman. You know, that the healer's path is the nurturer, let's say at this point. It's blending here with the archetype of the nurturer or the mother. that we can feel ourselves being pushed into that place and told, that's the acceptable bit. And the part of you that's out there going, we could do this and we could do that, who wants to innovate and be entrepreneurial and bring new visions into the world, is less acceptable at the moment in time. When we get older, and maybe if we're in a big company or something like that, suddenly we're all told we have to be visionary. There's this point where, so many of my clients that I work with are, now I'm at a director level in a company, and I've been drawing so strongly on my healer for so long because it's been my job to fix everybody and make sure and hold everything together. And now suddenly I'm being told that I need to be visionary and to be able to lead in a new direction. How do I make that change? How do I suddenly switch from being told, absolutely, that is not okay, you need to follow all the rules and do all of the stuff and fix all of the things and that's your job, into being here, this is the way forward and I'm going to disrupt. It's, we can't just move from one into the other without practice, without help. Suzanne says, I'm a chaos healer. Exactly, Suzanne. And that's actually a very good thing. And I know that you have worked really hard on that, recognizing that in actual fact, the mystic and the healer are meant to work together because they are the weavers. They're weaving together. They are the warp and the weft. That being a chaos healer, being somebody who says, I understand that healing is not always easy and comfortable. I understand that discomfort is part of that process, is something that we have really, really lost. Candice, you say, I think people see the healer as safer and feel more comfortable with that. Personally, the mystic can be just as healing, but in a different way, and absolutely. And I think this is really important because I think we're going to spend some time exploring the healer as well. I don't know when that's going to come. We shall see. The healer is so much broader than somebody who simply fixes things and makes it okay and soothes. That's part of their role, but really that's falling within the nurturer archetype, of which the healer and the nurturer can blend. But the healer has these strong instincts for what needs to be moved here and what needs to move there, so that when the wanderer comes through and says, right, this needs to be woven in and here's the vision blazing forth, and then the magician does the yes, and we do this and we do this and we move this and we move that and we do that, and the seer clears any of the ways that are blocked and says this needs to change, that needs to happen, that needs to change for that to happen, and then the healer brings it all together and tends to those frayed edges and makes sure that each part has been woven in effectively. So they're all working together all the time. And I've just described a process which sounds quite linear, but you will know that there are going to be different times throughout that journey when you're deploying different aspects of the self. So the mystic and the healer are not supposed to be in conflict, but our society can program us to the point where we feel like we're in conflict. And I want to share a little story with you, and it's not an illustrative story, it's an exploration story. I asked for a dream or a vision that was going to help with this piece today, and I received a really, really strong, visceral memory, and it played its way all the way through. For those of you who know the story of Anne of Green Gables, let me know if you know the story of Anne of Green Gables. When I was a little girl, there was a series of Anne of Green Gables, and it was just, it was magnificent. It was so good. I watched it so many times as a child. And in it, one of the stories that we have, because there's these little mini tales within of how Anne of Green Gables, who is an orphan, who has had a very, very difficult life, and has a lot more, in many ways, wisdom than she's given credit for, because she's only, I think, 11 when the story starts. But she's been forced into the role of healer and mystic and basically adult in families that didn't value her at all but needed her, until she gets adopted by a very unlikely couple, a brother and sister, I should say. And there is a moment when Marilla, who is she's not really a mother figure as such. She is, but she's the woman, the sister who has adopted Anne, has this amethyst brooch, and she loves this amethyst brooch, and Anne admires the amethyst brooch. Oh, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And this is quite early on in their relationship. And there's a picnic coming up, and Anne's very excited to meet all of the other young ladies, and she's thrilled about this picnic. She's made it into this fabulous, wonderful thing. And then I think it's the day before the picnic, or maybe the week before the picnic, Marilla's brooch goes missing. And Marilla thinks to herself, well, Anne, new child, has come into our house. She's lived in poverty her whole life. She's lived with people who aren't, particularly moral, let's say. She was admiring the brooch. The brooch is gone. There's only me and Matthew, my brother, who have lived in this house together for years and years and years, and the brooch is never gone, and now it's gone. And she says, Anne, what have you done with the brooch? And Anne says, I didn't touch the brooch. And Marilla says, I know you touched the brooch, and you will go to your room until you admit that you have taken the brooch. And Anne says, I did not take the brooch. And she goes to her room, and there's this standoff, this really long standoff. And eventually gets to the point where Marilla says, Anne, if you do not admit that you stole the brooch, you will not go to the picnic. And you can see, Anne, she's been in her room, she's eating her meals of bread and milk in her room for days. I can't remember exactly. To me, it felt like days. You can correct me if I'm wrong with the story. And then she stays in her room, and it gets closer and closer to the picnic. And then the day before the picnic, she comes down. She stands in front of Marilla. And she says, and I'm not going to do this justice, by the way, but she's always wonderful, the actress who plays this. She says, Marilla, you are correct. Could not resist the beauty of the brooch sparkling upon your dresser. And I took it just for a moment, and I pinned it upon my breast. And then I went out to the river, and I stood by the river, and I looked at the river, and I knelt over to see my reflection and to see the beauty of the brooch upon my poor orphan breast, having never ever seen a brooch of such beauty upon me before. And in that moment, the brooch slipped and it fell into the water. And Marilla says, I'm very glad that you have told the truth. Now go back to your room. And Anne said, and can I go to the picnic? And Marilla says, of course you can't go to the picnic. You took the brooch. And Anne is just incensed. She says, what? She goes up to her room in absolute, just fury. And the picnic starts, and she's not there, obviously. She doesn't go to the picnic. And then as Marilla and Matthew are getting ready to go to the picnic, they are walking. And Matthew says, Marilla! And Marilla says, what? And she turns, and he plucks the amethyst brooch from her shawl, where it had obviously caught and has been just stuck to her shawl for the last week. And Marilla's like, oh! She goes back to Anne and she says, why did you admit to taking the brooch? And Anne says, because you told me that then I could go to the picnic. And the reason that I share this with you is because I think that this demonstrates so well some of the pieces around the mystic and the healer, but also a little bit around the runes that we're going to be looking at a little bit more depth, particularly the Thurisaz rune and the relationship between the Thurisaz rune and the Ansu's rune. So the Thurisaz rune comes, it's the third rune in the Elder Futhar. Let me find it for you. Here we go. We are exploring Frigg's chariot in Thurisaz. So here's Thurisaz, and Frigg's chariot is going to move into Thurisaz on the 9th, so in 2 days' time. And here's the Thurisaz rune. And Frigg is also in retrograde at the moment. So that means that she's not on the throne, she's not in the position of queen. She's moved down and she's gone back into her own roots, down into the deep earth, and she is exploring this realm of Thurisaz. And she's finding those primal instincts and finding those deep stories and those deep woundings that can come through and that can cause us to act in ways that we don't really want to, or have dictated a story to us that might need to be refreshed. And so the Thurisaz rune here, we have our Feyre rune, which is the first rune in the Elder Futhar, which is the flow, this flowing energy. Imagine old Humla, the primal cow, she's there, she's this blissful mother energy coming through, and then Uruz follows with its 2 prongs, which brings stability and form to the universe. And then Thurisaz comes along, and it's a little bit like a circuit that creates this closed space, which is the result, the synergy, this bonding together of force and form that then takes root and becomes substance. And it's difficult, very difficult to break. Very difficult to break. And what you have is, in the Anne of Green Gables story, is first of all you have Anne herself, who is refusing to admit to something she didn't do, because she has been forged in the flames of a very, very difficult life. And has she become the criminal, immoral thing that she is thought to be by the society that she moves into? No, she has not. She has remained truthful and staunch, and her character is as strong as it ever was. And she holds within her a story of her parents who are teachers, and she's held that, and that is her Thurisaz seed that keeps her going through everything else. And so that's the strength of her will. They're saying, I will not give in and be told that I did this when I did not. And she holds out for that long. And then you have Marilla and Matthew and the people around them. Matthew less so, just to be really clear. He's much more on Anne's side from the beginning. Marilla is sort of like she's almost like the representation of society at the beginning, who judges and then comes to realise the truth of Anne's nature. And this is the story that is created about us, or that we can internalise. And what the Anne of Green Gables story does is it recognises that Anne, obviously she wants to be the self-healer. She wants to go to the picnic. She wants to meet children of her own age and bond with them. She knows that this is important for her life moving forward, and she wants to do that. And so she calls on her mystic. Her healer says, I'm stuck in this room on my own and I need help. And Anne is not naturally a liar. She is naturally a storyteller, and that becomes very, very clear later on. And this is her mystic self coming through. And so she called on her mystic to create this tale for Marilla, this sort of very compelling, beautiful story that she tells. She's going to do it. She's going to do it properly. Thurisaz again. But she draws on Ansius to do that. Now, that's Anne's journeys with the healer and the mystic. Now, what Marilla sees through that is not only that she is fallible, and so this is a little bit of a cracking of the Thurisaz rune here. If you see it, Marilla as being a very strong woman who has very formed opinions, she is another form of Thurisaz, probably less pliable than Anne at this point. She might not have the fire inside her that Anne does, but she has the the thorn form of Thurisaz that's prickly and has been formed by society over time, and part of that breaks in that moment. And when that breaks, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that she realises not only that Anne is not at all what she might have thought she was, she also realises that she and Matthew have an incredibly important role to play for Anne at this point, because although Anne was very, very strong in her Thurisaz nature, she's still a child, and she's still experiencing events that are outside of her control, i.e. being put in her room and being told she can't go to the picnic, which is incredibly important to her, probably the most important event of her life at that point. This is my permanent home, and I'm going to meet the children who I'm going to grow up with. She's going to meet her, her best friend, and it's all going to be wonderful and things. So this is the most important thing, and that's being denied her. And Marilla realises that there are going to be moments like that where Anne needs support if she's going to continue to be the truthful, honest, strong girl that she is, and turn into the fabulous woman that she becomes. And so Marilla realises at that point, this is more complicated than just applying rules and judgments and making judgments about a person and then applying rules that I already know. This is about following my heart and my instinct and opening up to my magical self. So this is why I wanted to bring that story in at this point, because I think there's a useful exploration for us in terms of looking at how there may well be times in our lives when we felt into that strong, powerful, this is who I am, and times when we were pushed hard enough that we adapted to that, like Anne did, and drew on something else, another part of ourselves to do that, and times when we were trapped by a story and that forced us to do that. And those might be woundings that we need to go back into to be able to say, you know, I feel as if Marilla's response and the way that she responded, because she is also an honest woman, helped Anne to resolve what could have been for another child a moment in which they accepted a story of, I am bad and I am a liar, you know, which Anne didn't. But you can see how these stories evolve over time. Now, this is the interplay between Ansus and Thurisaz. And at the moment, Odin is in direct motion, moving through his runes, you know, moving through Thurisaz, Ansus, Rado at this point. And Frigg, who is normally the stable element, who holds the throne when he is in retrograde, in retreat, which is more frequent, you know, she is the one who is now going deep into the places of collective story and drawing those up again. So this is a time when we can really work with our mystic and our healer to support each other. And Min is saying, I feel like the mystic directing the healer initiates deeper long-term healing. Yes, I think that's exactly right. I think that's absolutely right. Is that's when they can partner with each other. And the mystic can help the healer to be at peace with those moments of discomfort. And the healer can help the mystic to actually fully integrate the changes and the dreams and the ideals that otherwise would fade away. They wouldn't. We need that cycle. We need to cycle through them in order for them to partner together properly. Darcy, the healer can be the facilitator to help the one needing healing with the energies of the three, spirit healer and the one asking for healing. Yes, yes, Darcy. So Darcy's talking about my program on healing others with the runes and the idea of the partnership between the healer and the healed and spirit and how they work together and moving with them. In order to heal, we need disruption first to see what needs help. Absolutely, Candice. So yes, I'm glad that you're finding something within that. So this is my invitation to you in this week as Frigg's chariot moves into Thurisaz, is to really explore that relationship between the healer and the mystic for you, and also perhaps to look at it, look for it in the outside world or in stories that you know. Obviously Anne of Green Gables is the one that came forward for me, and I'm always going to remember that amethyst brooch now. Maybe I'll use some amethyst to work on that partnership between the healer and the mystic for me. Now, what I want to do before we look at the runes, the planetary runes, and before we look at your runes to see where they're coming in, is I've got a little exercise for you. And actually this is going to work really nicely for anyone who has Ansus. So Suzanne, it's going to work really nicely for you. And Maggie, you've got Thurisaz. It's going to really work really nicely for you. And it's going to work well for everybody at this point as well, because we've got that strong Thurisaz energy from Frigg's chariot, and we've got Ansus with Odin's chariot, and with Suna's chariot that's not moving this week, it's moving next week into Ansus, so it's building towards the Ansus moment. Now this is a very brief description of an exercise that can be used very creatively, using the energies of the Ansus rune and the Thurisaz rune, although we're going to be working with them very, very lightly. Now, I have been talking through the course of the live about this relationship between the healer and the mystic, and the way in which sometimes when the Thurisaz rune comes along here, they can be in tension with each other. It's like the story or the situation that you are in is outside of your control. So you've got you, and you've got the story, and you've got the world like underneath with the Ansus rune, and they're in there, this little powder keg that can come, and it can feel we can feel helpless, we can feel frustrated, we can feel despairing, we can feel anxiety, we can feel all of those things that come when conflict is contained within the strong shape of the Thurisaz rune, which, as I've already been talking about, can represent the consequence of the coming together of force and form. And sometimes that will feel good and brilliant and wonderful, and that is just as much Thurisaz. We can have a fabulous, wonderful experience, you know, when the alchemy is right. But when there's something that's out of alignment, we can feel very, very constrained, particularly when we're children, because we have much less control. At that point, our sense of self can feel much weaker than what's happening, than the stories that we're being told about ourselves and the world in which we find ourselves. You know, that's why we need that protection. We need the protection of family, and we need the protection of friends to help us, and to help us to build that strong sense of self-identity, so that we're not crushed by the weight of everything going around us. But sometimes we can feel as if we're crushed by that weight. So if you are experiencing that, or actually even if you're not, because as we've been discussing in the group today, sometimes things are buried very, very deep. You know, these are old, ancient stories. Sometimes they're not even ours. Sometimes they are past life stories or ancestral stories. So if you're finding like I'm feeling a little bit crushed, I'm feeling a little bit any of those emotions that I just talked about, worry, anger, frustration, you know, this is an exercise that can be useful. You can do it seated. I like to do it lying down. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it standing. And what you're going to do is you're going to start by really feeling that connection with the earth, which is the basis of Thurusaz energy. It's that sort of thunder, lightning, storm energy in the earth. It's the sky and the earth, and the power that builds between them. If you sort of see the cracks of lightning or the thunder are the manifestation of the Thurusaz energy at that point. So you want to make yourself comfortable on the earth, either seated or lying down. And you're going to start with a very gentle mantra, which is, the earth is ready to receive me. You say that as many times as you need to. The earth is ready to receive me. And it might be that your mystic self at this point starts to present to you different landscapes. And just know that each time the earth is ready to receive me, that landscape is opening itself up to you. And as you are saying, the earth is ready to receive me, the earth is ready to receive me, when you breathe in, breathe that landscape in, and then as you breathe out, just feel it settling, almost as if you are settling into it, you're being cradled by it. And it doesn't matter if you get multiple landscapes. I know when I do this, sometimes they can come quite rapidly, like places that I visited. Just know that you're having that connection, and that you're allowing yourself to fill with the energy of that landscape. Now, when I do this, I tend to find that I will get a couple of landscapes that are either sort of volcanic landscapes, or sometimes the energy of a geyser, or that deep underground energy. When we talk about the pressure, if you imagine here the Thurusaz, obviously the Thurusaz is sort of this way around normally, but we're working with it this way around. And here's the land. I want you to imagine that inside this Thurusaz rune is the power of the land, of the deep earth, of the volcano and the magma and the water as well coming up with the heat from the geysers, and it's there. And then when you are really feeling like the earth is ready to receive me, and you're feeling really deeply cushioned, what you're going to do is take your hands and you're going to place them, so I put them like sometimes over my heart, over my belly, wherever feels right, so just over my head, and you're going to bring your two fingers together like that to form a point. The rest of your hand can be flat if you want it to be, or it can be out. It doesn't really matter where you put the rest of your hands, and you'll notice that creates, I do that, a Thurusaz shape, like that, yeah? But we're doing it with two fingers because we are invoking not just the Thurusaz rune, but also the Ansuz rune. So the Ansuz rune has got its two prongs of energy. If I can find the Ansuz rune, I will. There we go. Where's the Ansuz rune? We are doing the Ansuz rune today, so let's just take a moment on the Ansuz rune. And I can find it for you. It's always the one that's the last to come out, isn't it? Here we go. So here's the Ansuz rune. So we're using two fingers to create the shape of the peak of the Thurusaz rune, and then in placing it in your body, the earth is ready to receive me. And then when you feel as if, oh, I'm ready for that release moment, you're literally just going to let those two fingers come apart. It's very gentle, and you're going to say T-H-U, Thu, then Thurusaz, Thu, Thu. And imagine that it is like the geyser is opening up. If you want to, you can do the sound of a geyser. Or imagine that it's a spray of magma coming up and releasing. And you don't need to do anything else. You don't need to think I am now releasing this past life thing, or I am now letting go of the row that I had with my partner over breakfast, or I am now letting go of, whatever. You don't need to do that, because you've already connected with the earth, and you're filling with that earth energy. And that earth energy, that strong, powerful earth energy, is going to be gently pushing and releasing the things that are causing pressure within the Thurisaz triangle. And then when you open the Ansus rune, and you're going to imagine that releasing out into the earth, and obviously the earth receiving that energy because it's part of a natural cycle. And that is going to really start to help to energize your relationship between your mystic and your healer, between the part of you that wanders out, breaks, finds new stories, new visions, is moving forwards into the future and drawing us towards the future, and the healer that is looking to fix and repair and restore and keep everything going in the moment. So have a little play with that exercise and see how that goes for you. So our focus rune. So I've mentioned Thurisaz, obviously, as our rune. Now we're not doing it again today because we did it when soon as Chariot moved into Thurisaz, obviously in Thurisaz at the moment, so we've got that right strongness. So we're going to look at Ansus. The sun is going to be moving into Ansus in the next week, and Ansus, obviously, if we think about Thurisaz and Ansus, they're great partner runes anyway. So Thurisaz can be seen as being chaos, and Ansus can be seen as being order, or Thurisaz can be seen as being the subconscious mind, and Ansus can be seen as being the conscious mind, or the giants and the Aesir. They are always working, they're always in tension with each other. And that's why that meditation is quite useful, because it releases that tension and it helps them to partner effectively together, which in turn promotes the partnership with the mystic and the healer. And the Ansus rune has its own set of natural, what's the word that I'm looking for? Of natural correspondences. As I've talked about the lightning, I've talked about the earth. Ansus has the wind, it has the rushing air, it also has water. It's known as being the estuary. It's also got the oak tree and the ash tree. So there's symbols of stability and strength, and the wildness that goes through it at the same time. So for the Ansus rune, obviously I've given you the meditation to use with the if you've got Ansus, you might want to work on the breath more. You can use all sorts of different breath work to do that, release work at the moment, and also to journey on if you're working with your mystic, working with the breath as a form of rhythmic meditation to support you with your mystic, as well as with the healer as well. And really feeling that sense of maybe the healer, you can revolve them actually to experiment. The healer might draw the air in, and the mystic might push it out again. But you can also do it the other way around. So the healer releases, and then you say, I'm ready for the next inspiration from the mystic. And you draw it back in again. So you start to create that cycle of partnership between them. So have a little play with that if you have Ansus as your rune. The next rune that I wanted to look at, let me see in our partner. So we've got Bacano, haven't we? Candice, you had Bacano, and that's one of the runes I wanted to look at. So Bacano is the rune of new growth, often associated with the spring, but there's a lunar quality to the Bacano rune, which I wanted to bring in now for you as well, Candice. So again, it's actually a very useful rune for releasing. We often think about it as being the generation of new life, but it's also the deep womb of the Great Mother, and it represents the whole cycle. So we talked about really feeling into the cycle of the archetypes of the magical self and how they work together. So the Bacano rune would be honouring those cycles. So it might be about honouring feminine cycles, looking at cycle tracking in terms of your own menstrual cycle and the lunar cycles, and seeing how they're working together at the moment, whether they're working together or not. We don't have time to go into that at this point, but this is a really good rune to work with if that's something that you want to explore and enhance. And you can start to look at, okay, well, when in my own cycle are the different archetypal energies more available or less available to me? No. The lunar cycle, you could say, well, the magician might be much more at the full moon, for example. We can work with the different archetypes in that way too, but we want to look at our personal energies in that sense as well. And that sense of the earth is ready to receive me can work even without using the meditation for this piece, because you can feel that as almost like a sinking into the earth with the Bacano rune, and then a receiving of energy. And I've actually got my hand on my belly. You probably can't see it right now. I've got my hand on my belly. So for you, if you do the Thuru Says and Su's meditation, you want to spend some time afterwards just with your hands flat on your body, grounding and integrating those energies and allowing the earth to take over, essentially, and just be like, okay, I'm just fully received with the Bacano rune there. What else did we have where we aligned? The Kinaz rune. So I wanted to cover Kinaz. That's one of our guide runes, and that is also one of Ru's runes, isn't it, Ru? So the Kinaz rune with the fire, let's say this creative fire, can actually feel a sense of frustration at this time, because we're talking about releasing, and we're talking about completing. And with the healer, it can be uncomfortable, because the Kinaz rune, one of its meanings is the expression of disease within the body. It's the way in which the body is transformed through its own cycles, whether good or bad. So a bruise on the skin when we've been injured is both a manifestation of the injury and a manifestation of the healing process at the same time. So it's a very visible, visceral rune, the Kinaz rune, and it's probably the best way to work with it through this week is less practical. It's really saying, I'm not trying to fix or change anything. With your healer self, you can be working on it in terms of going, okay, how can I open up more fully? Again, thinking about partnerships here, the partnership between the seer and the healer, in terms of really starting to tune into where is my body telling me that I need healing at this point? Where is it telling me to direct my self-care? And really just paying attention to the body. This is a very primal piece that we can do. We often talk about working with the child self, but when we do this piece about really paying close attention to the body and saying, even it might be just like one joint, that joint is feeling a little bit, it doesn't feel the same as the rest of them, and just giving it that little bit of tender, loving care and saying, is there anything that I can do there to just ease that slightly? You might think about this in terms of the way that a mother or a parent or a carer who is the primary carer for a baby can spend literally hours just sitting and watching the baby and saying, I might need to just draw the curtains shut a little bit more because there's just a chink of light and it might disturb the baby, or perhaps the blanket needs to be up 1 centimetre. It's that level of care. And that's working with the very, very tiny infant self, and it's really engaging with your healer to do that with the Kinaz rune. And with the with the mystic, again, it's about attentiveness. It's about saying, what does my mystic want to bring through, and giving your full attention, the Kinaz rune, keenness of attention, to the mystic. Recording every detail of each journey that you do, giving yourself time to really, really experience just a very tiny, if you're doing journey, not to be like, I need to go here and I need to go here and I need to go here, but actually saying, no, I'm going to explore this one environment in great detail to increase my communication with my mystic self. So the Kinaz rune here is about sight and vision and perception, less about manifesting and doing through the course of this week. Okay, so the other runes that I'm going to cover are, we've got Perthro, we've got Suelo, which is great because that's you, Darcy. So let's do Suelo, because that is your rune as well. And you've come up here live, which is lovely. So Suelo is the rune of the sun. It's the rune of that inner guidance, that inner knowing. Here we go, it's the rune of the sun. And really it does represent that moment of freedom. I'm going to see it at this point. Imagine it like the sun wheel. So when you're mystic and your healer are working in perfect partnership with each other, or your seer and your healer are working together, or your magician and your mystic are working together, like we've done before, you can see that the sun wheel then starts to revolve, that they are, one is ascending, the other is descending, and as they just keep on working together, spinning together, and they are giving each other momentum rather than pulling each other apart. So that's what the Suelo rune offers. So this is about really feeling into your instinct in this point. At this point. And you can do that again by perhaps after you've done that clearing exercise with the Ansus and the Thurisaz rune, just standing up and feeling your roots down into the earth, feeling up into the connection into the sky. And so where does my body want me to go right now? And following it. Where is my attention calling me right now? And following it. And giving yourself maybe 10 minutes to do that as part of the meditation is going to help to, with that partnership and with that movement and with that following the inner guidance that comes when we're able to connect deeply with both. So, final runes that we've got to look at are Perthro, Manaz, and Northiz. Interesting combination. So, we've got our Perthro rune, which is the rune of mystery, of weird, of sensuality coming through. We've got our Manaz rune, which is the sovereign self, the divine human coming through. And that can be interesting in itself, because the two of them are quite... There's a tension between the two of them as well. If you think about Perthro as being very much about surrendering in the moment, and Manaz as being the sovereign who's sort of standing and making decisions and holding that decisiveness. It's interesting that they have come up. And finally, the Northiz rune. So I'm going to do the Northiz rune first, because it actually works very beautifully with the Suelo energy that we were just discussing. So whereas the Suelo energy is that, so there's that freedom of movement is very important. Northiz is more internal. There's more inside the body. And so for you, what I would be doing is, after you've done your Ansus and Thurisaz release work, if you've received Northiz as your spirit guide this week, then you're going to want to stand up, and then you're going to feel into your body bit by bit, finger by finger, wrist by wrist, arm by arm, and you're going to very slowly move yourself, imagining that you are at this point breaking out of that old Thurisaz shell. Now, this does not mean that Thurisaz is a negative rune. What it means is that we have to clear Thurisaz energy regularly. Excuse me, I'm taking my shoes off, they're feeling uncomfortable. There you go, clearing a bit of Thurisaz energy, moving into a different state. We need to be able to move into a different state. Northiz is a deeply body-connected rune. And so really allowing your body to say, okay, where do I feel that now? Oh, I'm feeling that there's a constricting bit there. I'm going to pull that off now. Almost as if you are emerging out of the earth, after the earth has received me. And when you stand, you might imagine that you still got like bits of like bark or old dead wood or cracked soil on you. So you're just you're just pulling it off, releasing it, and letting it go down into the earth, knowing that the earth is still receiving that old energy. So that's for you with your Northiz rune. Now, Perthro rune here, with lovely Perthro rune, is the rune of surrender, this divine surrender. And for this, again, if you think about the meditation that we've been talking about, it's about that moment where the healer is able to say to the mystic, I surrender fully to you. Now, I trust you. And the healer allows themselves to be guided by the mystic into the deepest healing that is available to them in that moment. And then the mystic does the same and says, you have followed me. I am now ready to surrender to you and to let go of the ideals and the dreams that I had, because I know that I have done my part in bringing them into the world, and your job is to weave them into the world in a way that is going to be different maybe from what I saw alone, because it's always a collaboration. You know, spirit is there supporting. There are going to be other people out there supporting. This is the point where I've done my part, and I give that, and give it to the healer, and the healer will say, this is now what needs to happen. So it's that flow backwards and forwards. And if you feel any resistance, I certainly felt some resistance, and I was absolutely fine. The healer was fine, surrendering to the wanderer. Believe you me, mystic, I should say. Sometimes I call them the wanderer as well, but I don't want to confuse you. But my mystic self did not want to surrender to the healer. And I felt that. So you could actually try that exercise. If you've got Perthro as your spirit guide for this week, if you are working with any of the archetypes that are inside. We're not talking about surrendering to the world at this point. We don't need to, don't need to be. The Perthro rune isn't so much about surrendering to the world. It can be at times. It can be like, no, this is just happening. Now, we're in the Perthro paradigm at the moment, and the world is doing some stuff that we don't have much control over, and we surrender to it, but we're still participating in it. But what we're looking at here is surrendering more fully to yourself. And so actually saying those words out loud. Now, stepping fully into one part of yourself and then saying, I surrender fully to another part. So the sovereign here, and finish with Manaz now, might say, the sovereign self surrenders fully to the mystic self. How does that feel? And breathe into that. And if you feel as if there's a little bit of resistance, there's a little bit of tension there, that's when you might do some chanting with your Perthro rune there to help with that surrender a little bit. And so the Manaz rune is the sovereign rune. And you will remember that although Frigg is now in retrograde, she's down doing her thing, Odin is on the throne. And Odin is a beautiful example of a being that has engaged fully with his wanderer, with his sovereign self, with his magician, with his healer self as well. He's explored all of them, and he moves through them powerfully. And so this is about claiming where you are right now with the Manaz rune, claiming the power that you already possess and being confident in that and proclaiming that. So if you have the Manaz rune, it is well worthwhile thinking about, well, how could I boast of that in some way, maybe through a symbol rite, or maybe through just simply sharing in the group. This is what I've been doing. This is what I've been working with. Esther, it's fantastic that you've literally just come on and you said I have Manaz for the lunar month and we're talking about it. And I know that you've just updated your profile picture, haven't you? Which is a wonderful, fabulous profile picture, and it's so much you standing in your power. So there is a sense of being able to say, how can I be more visible in my power through this week? Releasing anything that says, oh no, we can't show up fully as ourselves because we've been told we can't, like Anna Green Gables, all that time. Yes, we can. So it's standing in that Manaz power again. So Esther, you came in beautifully then at the last minute. So that is our magical week for the week ahead. Next week we will be following exactly the same format. We'll be doing the same thing. Obviously, we are opening a new lunar cycle, which I'm very excited about. We do have one small change, which is that Middle Earth Readings is going to have a new name. We have some very clear guidance that needs to happen. Working with the energy of Urd's chariot in Ingus at the moment, so that's sowing those new seeds. And you'll notice that I've been working a lot more on stepping more fully into some of the other magical self roles, so we're not focusing just on seership. It's still obviously an element within Middle Earth Readings, but that's why the change needed to come. I was told, the readings bit makes it focus more heavily on the seer than is actually what we're doing through these course of this session. So we'll have a new name, so look out for that, for the rebirthing of Middle Earth Readings, but everything else remains the same. You'll come at the same time. We're going to be doing similar things. Let me know what's most powerful for you. What's been most powerful for you from this session? I would absolutely love to hear that. It helps me to keep focused, to keep to time. Obviously today's session, I try to keep them under an hour. We're just under an hour at this point. But please do let me know what's been the most powerful piece for you, so that I can keep making sure that Middle Earth Readings, when it is reborn, continues to meet your needs and to support this wonderful community of magical beings making their way in the world Thank you so much to everybody who has come. It has been lovely to see all of you and to read all of your comments. If you are watching the replay, please do say #replay. Let me know what's landed for you, what's the most powerful piece for you. And I look forward to seeing you next